Okay, so we've just finished looking at the exam. Let's move on to the new material then. Just a reminder that for the next several classes we're going to continue to use Microsoft Excel. So it would be very useful if you can bring your computer to class until further notice. And the homework assignment number 8 isn't due until a week from today. So you still have a little bit of time to finish that. But what we're going over in today's class, as well as the bond stuff that we talked about on Friday of last week, you can get started on the assignment. Just because you've still got quite a lot of time ahead of you doesn't mean that you necessarily need to delay. Any questions on the announcements? All right. Have you ever noticed there aren't very many food trucks in Huntington? I mean, there's the one coffee food truck on Hal Greer. What's the name of that food truck? What is it? Grindstone, right. And there used to be like a Mediterranean food truck that I saw a few times. They served like hummus and falafels and things like that. But I don't know. Our food truck scene is pretty weak in Huntington. I went to Portland a few years ago, and it's amazing what they've got in Portland. Like city blocks where there's just food truck after food truck set up, where you can go in Portland and you can find an authentic Ethiopian food truck if that's what you want. Food from the Republic of Georgia, Kazakhstan, Philippines, anything you can dream of, there's some food truck that's serving it. And it's pretty cheap too. Like you can get a huge plate of food for like $8.50 or something. So let's just take as an illustration, what if you decided Huntington needs a food truck and I'm going to do hot dogs because that's like the dominant food in West Virginia. The thing we don't have a shortage of is hot dog places. But let's say that the average food truck costs $85,000. You know, for the vehicle, the stove, to fully fit it out with like fire suppression and I don't know, cash register and whatnot. And let's say that you're going to go like highbrow hot dogs. You know, there's already enough hot dogs in Huntington where it's just an unremarkable piece of meat on an unremarkable bun. Too many places that go that route. So let's say that you decide you want it to be like high quality meat and actually like a fresh bun that's worth eating, and you're going to charge people $8.50 for that hot dog. That seems fictional, right? But this is a real food truck that's out there. So let's say that you're going to go that route, and the question is, if you're charging $8.50 a hot dog, how long is it going to take you to pay off your initial investment? You know, sometimes you'll go out and borrow money to start a new project, and sometimes you're using funds that you already have. But in either case, you can calculate something known as a break-even analysis. And so break-even tells you, let's say if it's your own money, if you spent $85,000 of your own money, how many years until you've got all that money back? And we want to take the time value of money into account. So it's not as simple as just multiply the number of hot dogs per day by $8.50 and then divide that by, divide 85,000 by that, because that wouldn't take the time value of money into account. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you a method that's called Unrecovered investment balance. We'll use Excel to do this analysis, and it can show you the crossover point in how long it takes to pay off your investment. And this thing that you're calculating, the unrecovered investment balance, what you're going to find is at the end of each year how much of your original investment has yet to be recouped by whatever it is you're doing to generate revenue. Now here's a figure that comes from your book, and it illustrates the idea of unrecovered investment balance. Now, first of all, I have to point out that this line is above the horizontal axis, even though what you did was you spent your money. That initial investment is an outflow, but just by definition we're saying, let's have how far above this line you are stand in as a debt. Either a debt or how much of your own money did you not yet get back from the food truck or whatever. So your initial investment is in the present, and it's some amount. Now consider this blue line. What it shows is during the first period, from 0 to the end of the first year, the unrecovered investment balance is going up. So that at the end of the first year, how much have you not actually got back yet is your original investment balance plus 1 times I prime, meaning it's the effect of compounding is going to increase your unrecovered investment balance. And that's because, let's say that you want to earn 4% on your investment. So at time 0, you've paid $85,000, and that's how much you don't have back yet. But before you get your revenue, it's $85,000 and whatever interest you're expecting. That's how much you don't have back yet. So this blue line peaks up just right before you get this year's revenue. And it's, of course, a simplification to think of you're getting your revenue all at once. But we're just saying that this is a period. So we could do periods in terms of months. We could do periods in terms of years. But the point is that how much money you haven't got back yet decreases once you get revenue. And how much does it decrease? You can see that the length of that black line is R minus E. And R minus E is revenue minus expense. So $8.50 for a hot dog, that's not all profit. Because out of the $8.50, you have to pay for the meat, the bread, the toppings, whatever heat source you use to warm it up. You're paying for the fees, the insurance, the person who's in the food truck, so labor costs. And so the profit is what brings down the unrecovered investment balance. It's not just the revenue. So, you know, the money that you're putting in your pocket, you're thinking, man, I've already shelled out $85,000, plus I should, if I'd had the money in the bank, at the end of the first year, I'd have that $85,000 plus some interest. So finally, you get a little bit of money back, but that first year, it's not enough to bring it all the way down to paying off your original investment. It takes a sequence of years. And so in each of these years, what we see is that the profit from each year brings down the unrecovered investment balance. And so that word unrecovered means how much of your original investment do you not have back yet? You know, you want to pay yourself first, they say. And so if you pay yourself first, how long is it going to take till all of that original investment is paid off? So N number of years. Any questions about what this diagram is showing? Any questions? All right. Now, there's a term here, this I with a little apostrophe next to it, I prime. What we mean there is it's something called the internal rate of return. So this is like an unknown interest rate in some cases. Like how much of a rate of return would you have to make for the project to balance out to 0 unrecovered investment balance after N years? Today, you're going to learn how to set up the spreadsheet with a given interest rate. In a future class period, you're actually going to be solving for an unknown interest rate so that you could say, well, if I have to pay $85,000 for a food truck and I know my revenue is going to be a certain amount, you could solve for what interest rate that is equal to. So that internal rate of return, I'll talk about what the word internal means, but in this figure what you need to know is it's some interest rate that causes it to balance down to 0 after N years. And so in a lot of these problems you're going to be solving for an unknown interest rate, but not today. Today's is a little bit simpler. What we're going to do is take the case of the food truck into account, and I've suggested a way for you to set up your, oh geez, I didn't see that there, tripwire. You need to put it at head height. Let's see. All right, I'm just glad it's the quick release kind.
Oh yeah. I think on the other side.
Okay. All right, so start up Excel, but before you start recreating this template, look at the problem statement and draw the cash flow diagram for what it says. And then on the back side is the table lookup factor. So the 4% tables on the back, Because what I'd like you to do is calculate the amount of the annual payment manually, because we're just going to see how it works out. Like if that amount that you calculate manually does cause this to balance down to 0 after 5 years. So you need to do A and B with just your pencil, but then on part C, you can start up Excel and recreate this spreadsheet, and then the formula for each column is both on the screen and on your paper. So like 2 equals I times 1. So that means column 2, the amount in column 2, is going to be your interest rate times the amount in column 1. So I've kind of given you the formula for what needs to be in each one of these columns. So did everybody get around $19,094 for the amount? Okay, so what the factor tables tell you is for 5 payments, how much the payment needs to be to balance out, in other words, to bring into financial equilibrium the amount that you received in time 0. So you got $85,000 from the bank. How much should each payment be so that the bank receives 4% overall interest? And so it's bringing into the equilibrium between the inflows and the outflows. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that to the test. We're going to see on the spreadsheet if it's true. Does this payment of $19,000 and $19,094 bring the unrecovered investment balance down to approximately 0? Now, one thing I'll point out is that this factor that we used from the table, it only has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 digits. And so there's going to be a little bit of round-off error. But what we should see is that in the end, the unrecovered investment balance should come pretty close to 0, within a couple of dollars. And if it does, then that means that actually this is the right payment amount to achieve 4% return. One of the things that's kind of nice about Excel is that you can drag down each column individually if you like, but once you've got a pattern, then you don't have to do each column individually. You can do like all of the columns simultaneously. Oops, let's move that out of the way. Like, let's see, I think it's following the correct pattern here where I could just drag them all down at once. Yep. So it says that if you're paying $19,094, then by the end it's going to be negative $377, meaning that you overpaid a little bit. But what if it was $19,093 and 55 cents? Okay, let me have that be just a reference to this one master cell here. Okay, I think I saw a lot of you had $1.33. What if we wanted it to be exactly 0? Like this number we got from the factor tables. So what amount should we actually have paid? Well, we can do that through goal seek, data, what if analysis, goal seek. Our goal is that this sale should be 0 by changing the payment amount. So it should actually be $19,093.30. So what we have now is a table that allows you to fill in the blanks on that figure on the back side of the page. The back side of the page is showing you how much is the unrecovered investment balance get up to before you receive your influx of profit, and how much does it go down to after the influx of profit. So on the handout, what it says is you can fill in the amounts from column 3 in these upper lines, and then the amounts from column 6 to give you the lower lines. So the unrecovered investment balance at the end of the year, after you've paid off that year's portion of the loan. The other thing that's interesting to look at is even though you're paying the same amount every year to the bank, the fraction of how much of that is covering interest versus how much of that is covering the principal changes from year to year. So look at column 5. What it says is that of your $19,093, $15,693 goes to buying down the principal, but $3,400 is profit. But once your principal balance is lower, then more of that payment is going to cover the principal. And so towards the end, in the last year, you can see that only a small fraction of the $19,000 is covering interest because the balance is so much lower at that point. So that's something that's important to keep in mind is, for instance, if you ever find yourself in a position where you're buying a house, it's to your benefit to pay off the house as quickly as possible because the bank is getting the majority of their profits early on because of, this is called amortization. How much of your payment is covering interest versus how much of your payment is covering principal. So if you can make extra payments early on, then it's going to reduce the amount of time and the overall amount in interest that you're paying to the bank. Okay, if you finished this spreadsheet and if you filled in the blanks, then I'll just leave you with one other thing I forgot to mention about the exam. If you add up the number of points that's possible on the test, it's 35. But if you look at the grade book, I've recorded your score out of 34. So that effectively gives you like a 3% boost. It's just a very small curve. So if you finished, feel free to leave. That's all I've got for you today. If you need some help making the spreadsheet work the way it should, I'm going to stick around. I'll continue to be here for the next few minutes. Otherwise, I'll see you on Wednesday.